Morning, guys. This is just a little side note that I wanted to put out about what I do with my wood that I use for my knife handles. And this will work for really any sort of wood that may be subjected to outside, elements, things like that. I tend to use a lot of figured wood in my knife handles, meaning burls and things like that. And the grain structure in a piece of burl kind of goes everywhere. There is no rhyme or reason to it. And by its very nature, that makes it a little bit unstable. And wood tends to absorb moisture really through the end grains more than the side grains. But with burl, you have end grains and side grains kind of all mixed together. So it can really absorb moisture right to the sides, and I don't want that to happen on my knife. So what I do, and what I've done for quite a while, is I do a process that semi-stabilizes the wood. And so the idea is, wood is like a sponge. Here are some scales that I've pre-sawed for my folders. They're thin. They don't have to be very thick, but I want them to be as tough as I possibly can make them. So this is maple burl. And it came out of the same parent block that this one came out of. And this is one of the ones that I treated with this process I'm getting ready to show you. And what this yields is, one, very hard wood, and wood that does not need any sort of finish. Now this is just fine sanded up to about 300 grit. And I will go a lot finer when I finally do apply this to a knife. But really all you need to do once you get it fine sanded out to about 800 is buff it, and it just takes a really hard, glassy finish that is durable. So that's what I want to do with these little scales. So what I use, and there are all kinds of products out there. There are products that you can purchase ready mixed. Some guys mix their own, but essentially we're going to use something called wood hardener or wood stabilizer, and really all that is some kind of acrylic that has been dissolved in acetone, essentially. And I was turned on to a pretty cool recipe once that I have been using, and it is it's on a quart jar like this. We don't have quite a quart in here, but I'll put a full pint of Minwax wood hardener, and then I'll put equal parts of boiled linseed oil and acetone to get it up to its level here. So it'd be like half wood hardener, which again is essentially some sort of acrylic dissolved in acetone with some other stuff in there, and then boiled linseed oil and then acetone to top. Mix it up. It's fumy, guys. Make sure you have some ventilation, and it's flammable. I mean, it is explosively flammable, so no flames anywhere near. So the rest of the process is simple. All you really want to do is make sure that your wood pieces are fully immersed. So when we put all these down in there, it's going to displace enough liquid to cover it, and this will float. So I have this little wire hold down that I use just to keep it all under the surface. And the idea is, wood being rather like a sponge is it's porous and it has a lot of air in it, and I use two different jars. This is a jar I say for darker woods like walnut, because this stuff will dissolve some pigments out of the wood, and so I put the darker woods in this, and then the lighter woods like maple I will put in this, and you don't mix the two up. I have done maple in this darker stuff, and it doesn't darken it terribly. In fact, this piece came out of that jar, that solution. So it's not like a terrible stain or anything like that, but I do like the color of the blonde wood and try to keep it as close to natural as I can. So you simply put it in there and take your wire hold down. It can be anything. And then instead of putting the original lid and ring back on here, I've made one up. And this is just, it's very simple, but it works. And I just rigged this to a common little brake pump. They're inexpensive. I got mine at Harbor Freight about 5 years ago. And it works just fine. So here's the idea. You just put that on. let it make a seal, and then you start pumping a vacuum on it. And I'm going to try to pan in so you can see what happens here. And I may go turn on the overhead light so you can get a better look at this. I'll be right back. I'll kind of go in tight so you can see what's happening here with the wood. The whole idea here is to get the air out of the wood and get this resin into the wood. So we start pulling a vacuum on it. And if you see, I hope you can see, kind of looks like an Alka-Seltzer in there. You see those are air bubbles. So you just pull a light vacuum, and as this air is sucked out of the wood, of course, it's going to make your vacuum drop. So you just keep at it, and after several minutes of doing this, now this stuff will sit here and boil for quite a while. When it subsides, you just you'll notice that your vacuum is dropped. So you just pump it down again, and I shoot for about 20 on this little meter, or this little gauge. Okay, it's been about 30 minutes, and the air has stopped coming out, and we're holding at about 18 on the scale. So what you want to do again, start pumping. Pull the vacuum, and if you can see, I really hope this shows up in the video, we have more air coming out. And you want to keep doing this and getting as much of the air out as you possibly can. So what this is doing is leaving voids in the wood that this stuff will get in and fill, and that is what stabilizes the wood. Eventually you'll get to the point where you can just draw no more air out. At that point, it is fine to go ahead and break your vacuum, and then just I take the pump off and put the regular lid and ring back on here, and then I just let this stuff sit another day, and then we take it out, and then I just find a quiet spot in the shop here where I can lay these on edge just apart and let them dry, and a 2-week drying period is good enough. And then after that, you don't have to worry about moisture getting in here and doing the things that it would do to an untreated piece of wood. This little block right here is one that I cut and treated. It's been about 3 years, and had I not treated it, like this little piece here, this is the same burl. But if I don't treat this or somehow support it and come back in 3 years' time, this thing will have warped and twisted and done all kinds of weird things that makes it kind of useless for a knife scale. And this one has stayed straight. I haven't planed it or sanded it or anything. This one was done just about the same time, and it has not moved, and it's still flat. I can lay that down, and it's nice and flat, and it's ready to use. So this is a good process. It just takes a little bit of time and takes a little bit of caution, you know. Flammable stuff, but you know what? It's the same kind of caution you would exercise when you fill your lawnmower with gasoline. Each time I do this, it'll pull a little higher vacuum, and I don't really care to go too much above 20 on this gauge. It seems to do a good enough job, and I've not had any bad luck doing these. My knife handles are durable when I'm finished with them. They're pretty, and that's the whole idea. But you do need to do something when you're using highly figured wood. Don't rely just on, you know, oils, any sort of finish to do what this is going to do. This gets through and through. You can cut this at cross section and you see the treatment going all the way through the piece of wood. This doesn't make the wood any harder to work with common wood tools. You can checker this, you can sand it, drill it, whatever you want to do. It just makes the wood much more durable, and that's the whole point. So I'll come back here in about another hour or so, pull another vacuum, and eventually, as I said, you'll stop seeing these bubbles come out, meaning you're done with that part of the process, and then we'll just break the seal, lid it up, and let this stuff work in, and a 2-week drying period, and put it away till you're ready to use it. But I just wanted to show you this little process that will really pay dividends down the road when these knives get out into the field and get used. So that's it. Wood Alka-Seltzer. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you after a while.